Hello, I'm Dave Litton and welcome to my PRINCE2 Foundation and Practitioner Exam Assistant. Its purpose is not to give you lots of practice at exam samples. It's more important than that. It's to allow you to build your exam technique so you can get more marks in either the Foundation or the Practitioner exams. One of the questions I often get asked is they're all trick questions. People think that the exam is there to trip them up, but that's not true in any way. I want you to know that the examiners are actually on your side. They want you to pass. All the examiners are trying to do is to test your understanding of PRINCE2, and all you have to do is to prove it to them by passing. What is important in both of the exams is that good time management is vital. I would say it's less so in the Foundation exam. Most folks find that is, in the 1 hour you get, sufficient to get enough for the pass mark. But it's certainly true in the Practitioner exam, where you will have to manage your time very carefully. Now, the Practitioner exam consists of a scenario plus 9 question topics, and you'll have 150 minutes in which to complete the exam. If you allow 15 minutes for each question, and that includes 15 minutes for the scenario, then you're probably going to get the job done. I know many people that have actually passed the Practitioner exam, yet they didn't quite finish all of the questions. Now, I'm not suggesting that as a strategy in any way. If you are against the clock and you're finding you are running out of time, don't give up, just keep going, because you may well still have sufficient marks to pass the exam. And if you're undertaking any sample exam papers, then take as much time as you like, so you make sure you understand the information. But you might want to go through a dummy run and see exactly if you can answer the set of topic questions in 15 minutes each. In the actual exam room itself, the invigilator, very often the trainer who's trained you on your training course, please let them know if you're finding the room is noisy, too hot or uncomfortable in any way. If it's at all possible, they will do something about it. Don't wait to the end of the exam and then complain. Fix it during the exam. Many of my delegates actually like energy drinks. I don't like the taste of them personally, but if you do, then it's not a bad idea to bring a couple of the cans in. I'm sure you know the make I'm thinking of. Or if nothing else, make sure you do have water. Then have some available during the exam to keep your thirst quenched so you can focus on the job in hand. And here's a thought for you. Plan B. You can always retake. Now, that's a rather strange thing for me to be saying. But some people get very nervous and uptight during exams, and I can understand why. Frankly, I used to do the same. But you can retake these as many times as you wish. Now, it will have a cost implication, but think of it this way. It's not the end of the world. If during a particular exam you're realizing you didn't do as well as you'd hoped, don't get depressed. It's just a bit annoying, a bit frustrating, but you can always retake. However, let's focus now on you passing first time. Let me talk first about the Foundation exam. This is a 1 hour paper and you will have 75 multi-choice questions. However, 5 of the questions will not be marked. The examiner will be testing out new questions and he will include 5 of them in your paper. However, they won't be counted as marks. They're not trying to be tricky here. It's merely a way for the examiner to test out new questions. So you must answer all 75 questions, but of course only 70 questions will be marked and go towards your score. And you need to get 50% right, which means you need to answer 35 correctly. Now, that's not so bad if you think about it. If you go into the office, your office on a normal Monday morning, imagine your boss saying to you that whatever you're going to be doing this week, as long as you get at least half of it right, your boss will give you a pay rise. I think that would be a very generous boss, would you agree? So don't put yourself under too much pressure. PRINCE2 quite rightly believes that if you get half or more correct, then you have understood the foundation elements of PRINCE2 sufficiently. Of course, I believe that if you only just struggle through only getting 50%, then it probably should be a big clue to you that the practitioner exam will be an uphill struggle for you to pass. So I would recommend that what you should be learning and focusing on is getting a pass mark up around the 70 to 80%. This would prove to yourself that you're in good shape and you've done a good job on understanding the foundation PRINCE2 material. It's a closed book exam, so all you'll have is your head and the paper in front of you. As you've probably been made aware of already, you actually get a pencil with an eraser on the end, and you will be shading in little ellipses to show which is your answer, A, B, C or D or what have you. And a good idea is to shade them in quite lightly to start with. That way, if you do change your mind, you can erase it more easily. The foundation exam will be marked by the trainer or the invigilator if that is a different person. Which means that if you normally take the foundation exam on a Wednesday night for a typical Monday to Friday course, then you will be able to go home on Wednesday night knowing what your score is. The foundation exam, by its very nature, should be fairly straightforward. I say this with the benefit of hindsight, of course. It's straightforward if you have worked hard and you've understood the PRINCE2 method, usually in the first 3 days of your training course. The questions will be based on the information contained directly in the PRINCE2 manual itself. Now, the practitioner exam is 2.5 hours in duration, as I've already mentioned, and again it has 9 questions with subparts. It's called the objective test. Now let me explain. The 9 questions are really topic areas, and for the most part, usually 7 of these, they'll be based on the themes within the PRINCE2 manual. Usually 2 of these questions are based on the processes. So these subparts might be part A, part B for each of the 9 questions or topic areas. There are a maximum of 12 marks per question, giving you 108 marks in total. You need 55% to pass, which is 59 marks or more. This, however, is an open book exam. What this means is you will only be allowed the manual. That does mean that any information you have personally written into the manual will be allowed by the invigilator, but you're not allowed to paste or stick any other information within it. So please don't attempt to do that. You'll find that during the exam that time management is important, and it's highly unlikely that you'll be actually reading the manual, but it is highly likely that you'll want to quickly go to certain parts of the manual, perhaps just to check some technical aspect of the PRINCE2 method. So it's a good idea to tab your manual up for each of the main chapters, in particular, of course, the process chapters, the theme chapters, and probably Appendix A, and the other appendices will be worthwhile as well. Appendix A, because many of the practitioner exam questions are based upon the management product descriptions, or templates if you will, contained in Appendix A. As I've said already, you will be against the clock, so time management is important here. Do you remember the earlier slide when I recommended that you allow 15 minutes maximum per question in order that you can complete the whole exam within the time allowed? Foundation exam tips number 1. Here's something which I find very, very useful. Answer the paper in 3 passes. So when you start, look at question 1 and see if you know the answer. This will be your first pass. And what I mean by that is go through from question 1 right the way through to question 75. So the first pass, do the easy ones first. If you see a question and you know it pretty much immediately, answer it and move on to the next. If the next question is one which you're really scratching your head about, don't sit there and get frustrated or panicking. Move directly on to the next question, and so on and so forth. At the end of the first pass, you'll probably find that you've answered maybe 20 or 30% of the questions. But they're the easy ones out of the way, and you've got yourself a good database of correct answers, which should be a very positive thought for you at this juncture. Come the second pass, go to the first question you couldn't answer, and this time spend, say, 10 seconds or so rereading each question you didn't get on the first pass. Normally, this second reread will allow you to see exactly what the answer is. But if again, after 10 seconds or so, you're still scratching your head, it's obviously a difficult question for you personally, so move on. Now we come to the third pass. I would recommend check the clock in the room or your watch and check how much time is remaining. From my experience, you'll probably have 10 to 15 minutes, if not longer. I've known this first and second pass to be done in the first half an hour, leaving you 30 minutes remaining. In which case now you've got the ones which are more tricky. Try these techniques. Read the question a second time or a third time might give you the answer. In other words, the more times you read it, it might suddenly come to you. Cross off the answers that you know to be wrong. In other words, try to get this by a process of elimination. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. By crossing off the answers that are wrong, then the one that must be left must be the right answer. Or it's a very high likelihood it's the right answer. Just fill in any answer. Make an outright guess if you want. The worst thing you can do is to hand your paper in at the end of the exam knowing there's some answers you haven't even attempted. Even lucky guesses might give you an extra few marks, which could mean all the difference. Let's have a look at an example question. No, it won't be coloured in this way, it's just an example. Which aspect of project performance ensures that what the project delivers is consistent with achieving the desired return? Let's imagine, like our chum down here, you're really scratching your head about this one. Now, which one is it? Well, by a process of elimination, let's imagine you don't know, and if you do, well done. You think about quality. Well, desired return might suggest to you that this is something to do with the business case. At least return on your investment or something like that. So although quality is important, that's probably less likely to be the answer. On your question paper, you could put a question mark or even a little cross, just to remind yourself of your mental thought. Scope, what's included and what isn't. Well, again, that doesn't feel like a right answer, so put a question mark. Benefits. Well, I know that's in the business case, and I'm thinking of desired return. This sounds like that might be the one, but don't move too quickly. Cost. Now, cost has something to do with money, of course, and desired returns, it could be that one. I might say that probably benefits might be the better choice. And by the way, it is the right answer. So there's just an example, even if you really weren't sure of how you might get an extra mark. Now let's move on to the practitioner exam tips. The first thing you'll want to do, and I suggest you spend a good 10 minutes reading the scenario first. If you've got a highlighter, a yellow highlighter, I recommend you do, then you might want to highlight key points. Perhaps a good focus is on the products that might get mentioned in the scenario as well. This might help keep in your mind exactly what the deliverables are of the scenario. Now you need to look at the 9 questions, and I would suggest you do them in number order. I always teach my delegates to do it that way. Number 1 is consistent, and number 2, you may well find that later answers will be helpful on earlier questions. So attempt question number 1 and continue through. I don't suggest that you do this in several passes like the foundation exam. The reason why I personally recommend that is that you'll be jumping from topic to topic and your brain will be spinning. So keep on, for example, question 4, when you get to it, let's imagine it's something to do with the business case, then you're in the business case thinking zone, and I find that's more efficient. Make any notes on the question and the scenario on the actual question sheets themselves that you'll have in the exam pack. You will have to hand these back, of course, and quite right too, but there's nothing wrong with you making notes on it, perhaps just to help you get to the right answer. As I've already mentioned, allow yourself 15 minutes maximum per question topic. If you can do them in a little quicker, then when you come to the end, if there is a particular earlier question that you've thought of that you think that you might have a different answer, then you can go back. Read any additional information for the next question only. What do I mean by that? Well, the first thing, of course, read the scenario. Now let's imagine you're on question 1. Check to see if there are any extra information on question 1. There's normally extra information, additional information for each of the questions, although some may not have it. So read that extra information before you attempt the question. There may be important information there that will help you answer the question quickly and get the right answers. If you're struggling on an answer, maybe make a note and move on. I would not recommend this as a strategy, as I've already said, but there's no point you spending your 15 minutes and still worrying about it and then spending another 5 minutes. You're missing out possibly on future questions that you can do quickly and easily. Keep an eye on the clock, in other words. Remember, strict time management is needed. I would recommend when you get to your 15 minutes, mercilessly move on to the next question. Remember, you only need to get 55% correct, and spending precious exam time scratching your head on areas which you're not really sure about is likely to lead to a fail. I now want to just cover broadly some of the types of questions you'll see. Again, my intent here isn't to give you any answers per se, but to get you used to scanning and reading and understanding what the examiner is getting you to answer. I've just invented this, and this is exactly how it will be laid out on your question sheet. You'll have a syllabus area and it'll name it. I've called this the quality theme. It'll have the question number. Let's imagine this is question 4. And as I said, each topic will be split into parts. Let's imagine this is part B. Normally you'll just have a part A or B, although you may get a part C sometimes. But the new exam normally is just an A or B. And the examiner will tell you how many marks will be awarded to this particular topic area. You'll usually find quite clearly the number of marks relate in some way or multiple to the number of questions. And here, since you've got 3 questions, you may rightly assume it's a mark a question. So this question type goes something like this. There'll be 2 columns, column 1 and column 2. And it'll say clearly something like this. Column 1 is a list of objectives. For each objective in column 1, select from column 2 the quality activity that addresses it. Each selection from column 2 can be used once, in other words per answer, more than once, or not at all. What the examiner is trying to tell you here is that when considering the answer to question 1, let's imagine it's A, you might find once you've answered all questions, B was never used. That's all they're saying here. But for each question, you must come up with an A or a B or a C. Working with the customer to understand their quality expectations. Which part of quality is that about? Again, if you're not sure, go to the quality theme in the manual. There's a great diagram there that'll almost certainly tell you this answer. What you'll find out is that in fact the answer is C. This is part of quality planning. Ensuring that organisation standards are being met. Well, who would ensure that that is the case? And the answer is quality assurance. Updating the quality register after a quality review. Well, this is well after the product's been made, of course, and this is, of course, quality control. Here's another type. Again, I've just invented this, but to remind you, you'll have this information at the top of the question paper. Make sure you understand it. This happens to be question 2, part A, and there's 7 marks. So in the full question, you'd actually get 7 of them. This is just question 1 as an example. It'll say something like this. Using the project scenario and the additional information provided for this question, there you see is where it is directly asking you and reminding you to read that, but I hope you will have already have done that before even attempting this question. In the scenario booklet, answer the following 7 questions. Again, this is just one of them. Each question provides a list of true statements about the conference project. Again, I've just invented this. Let's imagine the scenario was to do with the conference project. But only 2 statements are appropriate entries for that heading of the business case. Remember to limit your answers to the number of selections requested in each question. Okay, so number 1, which 2 statements should be recorded under the reasons heading? Now you'll get quite a lot of these types of questions. The first thing I'd want to do is to go to Appendix A, because you may have some extra information there that'll help you see the type of information that should be recorded. You might also want to go to the business case theme, again in the text of the manual it may well cover the type of information under reasons. And you now have to decide which of these, which two, are reasonable and correct. Now a little tip here, and that is that the business reasons should be either based on something to stop pain or something to get gain. Now, A is talking about boost customer repeat business by 15%. This is a benefit, so this would be recorded under the benefits section, not the reasons. The average return on investment has been this. Well, so what? It's just a piece of information. That is no reason why you'd want to run the project. Which means the last two must be correct. We are now losing an extra 6% of our revenue to competitors. That would be a reason why you want to run a project to boost sales. Our low company profile has resulted in a loss of 10% sales this year. Again, that would be a right answer to include under the reasons heading. I'll make the point, I'm not here to teach you this stuff. It's just that how you might use some logic to understand what the right answers might be. Here's another type of question which normally takes quite a bit of thought to get correct. It'll say something like this. For each question below, identify the appropriate option from A to E, A, B, C, D, E, that applies. Each option can be used once, more than once, or not at all. What that means is, for question number 1 here, it's only one of these answers. Okay? You only need to consider the because option if both assertion and reason are true. You'll notice the column here is called assertion. In other words, here's a statement I hold to be true, and here's the reason why we believe that statement to be true, with the because link in the middle. So 3 columns here. Let's deal with this slowly and carefully. If the left-hand side is true and the right-hand side is true, only then do you need to consider whether the because is true. Let me explain. If your answer was A, it would mean they're both true. But the right answer could be B, when they're both true, but the only difference between A and B is the because. If you said that Fred drinks a lot, it might be because they're thirsty, or they like the taste of Coca-Cola if that's what they're drinking. So both sides could be true, but it's only if the because is true that you'd give it an A. If either the left-hand side or the right-hand side or both is false, you don't need to consider thinking about the because. Now that alone should help you to deal with these questions much more quickly. Matt Bogard, the engineering manager, should be included in the communication management strategy document. Well, it's just an example, and because you haven't read the invented scenario that I have, you wouldn't know whether that was true or not. But let's imagine it's true, that the engineering manager should be involved in the communication aspects of the project. So I would actually put a small T here, or a check mark if you wish. Then I go to the other side. The communication management strategy describes the communication tools to be used. Well, this is a factual question, and the answer is yes, it does. So that would be a T as well. So if this was a real question, I've got a T here and a T there, meaning you've got to consider, is this the main reason why this statement here is being made? And if you believe yes, then the answer for that is option A. If you believe they're both true, but this has no bearing on that, then it would be B. Just thinking about that, because the communication management strategy includes communication tools, is not a reason why you should include the engineering manager within that particular document. So this would score a B in this case. The second question. The point in time when all the packing and dismantling has completed would be a good point to have a stage boundary. Again, you can't answer that here. It's just an example. But the answer is that was a key point, so it would be a reasonable choice. On the right-hand side, a stage boundary provides review and decision points and the ability to make decisions. This is a true statement as well. So because it's a true again, you have to consider whether it's an A or a B. And the answer is actually it's an A. Remember, if either side is false, one of them or both of them, then you need to consider a C, D or an E. Here's another type. It will usually start off with a description at the top. So normally you'll have a scene setting up here which you need to read and understand to help answer this type of question. Again, you've got two columns. For each risk response in column 1, select from column 2 the type of response it represents. Each option from column 2 can be used once, more than once, or not at all. So we'd need to go to question 1, read it carefully and say, is it A, is it B, is it C, and so on and so forth. Just a bit of technique here for you. Wait until the competition does bring out a similar promotion. Directly you see something that says wait until, you're almost certain to know that it's the fallback type of action. This used to be called contingency. In other words, only if something happens will we do something different. So that would be a C. Add extra resources to your project to bring the diary delivery date forward. Well, you're worried about the risk of a competitor bringing out a similar diary. So doing yours earlier will reduce the risk. Cancel the project, decide not to compete. Well, what you're doing here is deciding not even to join the game in, so this would be an avoid. Whenever you see a question that's something along the lines of record it in the risk register and monitor the situation, that's your do nothing, which means in this case accept. What I hope you're getting from this is getting used to the scan pattern. You need to read the information first, deal with each question in turn, make a decision, and then shade that in your answer sheet. Here's yet another style of question which you may come across. Now this type of question really can frighten people. The reason being is you're having to read the question, which I'm going to show you in a minute on the next slide, but from that come back to your additional information and read normally the layout of information with a particular management product description. In this case, it's the project product description. Again, you can get this template from Appendix A. And what they're showing you here is, and I've just shown you a couple of them as an example, the composition section of the project product description and the derivation section of the project product description. Now let me just swap back and forth a minute. Here is the question you'll actually get to do with this. Alright, stay with me here. So it says, using the project scenario and the additional information provided for this question in the scenario booklet, answer the following questions about the project product description. The first question says, which two statements apply to the composition section? In other words, this information, which is normally numbered for you to answer the question. And A says, the right answer could be amend entry 2 to selected photographic paper. Now, if all you did was to read this first, and then secondly, go and find the additional information, your brain would be getting confused. What I suggest you do is this, is that when you see a question like this, which is talking about amending or deleting a document that's shown in the additional information, do not even read or attempt the questions first. Just spend a few minutes looking at this with your head and mind clean, if you will, saying to yourself, for this project, in the project product description, which of this information would make sense to be included in the composition section? In other words, which of this is the composition of the end product? So read this first and just put a tick or a cross or a question mark very quickly against this. Just go with the flow. And if you thought, for example, that diary distribution didn't make sense here, put a question mark against it. And do the same quickly for the others. Can you see what I'm giving you here? You're thinking about the composition, you know what the end product is, and you're quickly saying which of these are sensible and which might be nonsense. And then, and only then, when you've done them all, should take you no more than 4 to 5 minutes, go and answer the question. So if A says amend entry 2 to selected photographic paper, you can now go back here, and if that was a case in point, if you've got a cross against it, you probably know that it's a true question, that indeed it should be amended. Get the idea? So I'm not going to go through this with you anymore, but you can understand how this will make more sense and you're more likely to come up with the right answer. Here's another one which you may come across, and it's a sequential type of question. Here you'll have a column with a number of actions, and over here are the sequence in which those actions should be undertaken. The only technique I can offer here is that since this is talking about issues, then go to the change theme and you'll probably find a diagram there that shows the sequence in which this stuff should happen. And that might quickly allow you to see what the right sequence is. Now, whatever you do, if they do lay it out like this, don't go through all of these and think through each. You'll be wasting a lot of time. What I would suggest, using your pencil on the question paper itself, perhaps with the manual in front if you're not sure, put 1 or 2 or 3 here if you think that makes sense. That's the first one, or the second, or the third. And so in other words, answer the question here and then look for which one will be right here and then move on. And in case you're wondering, yes, the right answer is C. Prove it to yourself by going to the Prince manual now. Don't take my word for it. Okay, well done. You're already smarter than the average PRINCE2 exam candidate. I mean that in a positive sense, in that you've taken the time and care to think about the techniques you need for the exam itself. The best way to pass the PRINCE2 exam is to work hard and to understand the PRINCE2 method. As I said before, the examiner is not trying to trip you up. Merely set out a set of information to prove to them that you know enough to be called a PRINCE2 practitioner. So thank you for your attention. I hope you found this useful, and good luck in your studying and passing both your foundation and practitioner exams. And if you want to fully prepare, I recommend that you go on over to my PRINCE2 Foundation and Preparation site, www.prince2primer.com, and we'll meet again on the other side.